Welcome back, or welcome to the Tiny Shift podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Nunn. This is episode number 8 or 7. I realize that I have fallen behind a little bit. I do apologize. So, the last few weeks have been pretty crazy. So, obviously, at the start of the year, I committed to doing a podcast, and then I became a father. So, huge news, super exciting. It's been a crazy few weeks, to be honest. And I also have been continued to work as well. So it's just been a lot on my plate. And there's a couple of ideas of sort of podcasts that I wanted to share with everyone. But I thought I would, first of all, I'd just address, becoming a dad and how incredible that's been. When I talk about mindset shifts and, the things about how perspective and the stories we tell ourselves about the world and the way we see things, I think becoming a dad has been one of the most remarkable things ever. The moment, the experience, the sort of perspective that you have of other people, of parents, of mothers, people, what they've been through. And yeah, it's quite remarkable. And to see a little baby in front of me who straight away sort of changed my life and the way I look at the world and the way I show up each day, I'm really excited for, you know, whatever's next. So that's exciting. I wanted to think about like what I was going to share in this episode. And the last 6 months or something, I've mentioned previously, I've done a lot of talks. I've been speaking on stage pretty much weekly, a couple of times a week, all over the country. It's a lot of travel. And I've been delivering a talk with the idea of trying to help people sort of cut through the noise. So I thought this would be a great time to share in this episode exactly what I stand up on stage and deliver to the leaders, obviously without the sort of experience, but I want to break down the sort of idea, concepts. So hopefully by the end of this episode, you understand that the core question I'm trying to sort of get people to question right now is this. We know what we need to be doing. We know the goals, we know the habits, we know the systems, but why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? Why can't we follow through with our tasks? If we have a dream or a goal or something, a mission in life that we want to try and achieve, it can be something simple. It doesn't need to be anything extraordinary, anything big. Why are we unable to do it? Or even in the workplace, companies go through this with leaders, senior leaders, teams below them, they're trying to motivate them. The one thing I found as a leader was the people on my team knew what they had to do on a daily basis. They had clear schedule that they had to do. They had to deliver. They had to do certain things. I worked in sales, so they had certain KPIs, key performance indicators. Essentially, it meant that you have got to make this many calls. You've got to have this much time on the phones. You've got to follow up and all these sort of things. And even trying to get people to do things like that was quite challenging. And what is it? What is that gap? So I don't think it's experience. I don't think it's intelligence even. I think it's the stories we tell ourselves, not just that, not just those stories, but there's a gap between our expectations and what happens and what we do. So where we want to be in our life and what we're doing on a daily basis. And I want to highlight this gap, bring awareness to it. And I call it mind the gap. That's what my keynote is about. Today we're going to be delivering that. So I'm going to be going into details. And by the end of this, I'm going to give you a tool that can hopefully have you better understand what your mind's doing, why it's doing it, and how you can better adjust. And then one practical tool that you can take away straight away and you can apply it in all areas of your life, from goal setting to at work, at home. It just helps in so many different avenues. When you communicate people, make sure you communicate clearly and all sorts of those things. So I'm going to break down what I believe is in this gap, what this gap is, and give you a bit of an understanding of it at the end. So let's begin. So in my talk, I start with a big experience with everyone in the audience. I engage everyone's imaginations and show them a pretty incredible magic trick. Then after that experience, I break down about how in that moment, each person experienced magic slightly different. 20% of people get super excited. They're like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is the best thing I've ever seen. And you got the middle gap, about 60% of people, he, a bit like me, they're analytical. So they watch it, but automatically they don't react as much. Their brain jumps to, okay, that was incredible. How was it done? And if they don't work out in the moment, obviously it's in the show, they're the type of person who's going to go on Google afterwards and try and work out how it's done. Then you've got the final 20% of people. So these people, they dislike magic. They hate magic, to be honest. And often it's because the conflict, the experience that they're getting, because magic causes what we call a cognitive dissonance, which is a conflict between what you know and what you experience. Now, nobody is immune to it when what you experience doesn't align up with your version of reality. So I try and demonstrate and show people this cognitive dissonance. And this is an automatic response that happens. It actually feels quite uncomfortable. It's like I coined the term sort of wonderfully uncomfortable when it comes to magic. But this happens when you're learning something new, when you're trying to sort of learn a new task or take some piece of information and trying to assimilate it and trying to get it inside of your minds. And it can be quite difficult. And this discomfort is where your mind does automatic stuff. So it often will, your biases will come in place. You have heuristics, but often you will sort of dismiss it and try and cling to this sort of safety. So this is where I highlight to people, this is where the gap begins. This is where you get that stimulus, whether that's a new piece of information, a new idea, an experience that doesn't line up with the way you see the world. What you do next is often automatic and you don't have control about it. And what's in this gap, what's in this space is I highlight three things in my talk. So one of them is stories. So stories are basically the stories that you tell about yourself and about the world that you live in. So for instance, each one of us has stories about our own identity, how you see yourself. So I know myself, my stories have changed over the years, but there's some of them that, you know, are with me most of the time. I would say I'm a runner. A simple story. I think most people know I run. I do a lot of running. And that, because that's part of my identity, I don't need to think too much about it. I can just show up and then I can run. But then there's other ones, I could be like, I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert. So I want you to think about stories that you have about yourself. And some of these stories can be from when you were a childhood. I had stories and certain assumptions that I had about myself that I carried around for a very long time. And I highlight some of these in my talk. So, for instance, ADHD, I have ADHD, anxiety. So, that used to be a story that I had. And the story was I'm anxious. I would identify with anxiety. And this can have a profound effect on you, your body. If you identify with anxiety, the belief and the expectation then is that anxiety is part of you. So then when you go throughout the world, you're going to respond in certain situations with this level of anxiety. And it's so fascinating how your beliefs and the stories you have can have a profound impact on your experience. And we just have to look at things like the placebo effect to like fully understand it. And I talk about this in my talk about the power of stories and about how we need to be aware of the stories that we tell on ourselves. And maybe sometimes it's about changing that story, and I give a system on how to do that. So the next second part of my keynote is I talk about safety. So safety is essentially when we go into a place of discomfort, something we don't feel comfortable with, we cling to comfort. When we feel discomfort, fear, anxiety, stress, we often dismiss it and we want to feel comfortable straight away. So we push off trying to achieve this goal, or we feel resistance of something we know we should be doing. There's a Stephen Pressfield had a book called The War of Art, and it's a brilliant book. But basically, he breaks down on when you're creative and you want to do something, we feel this resistance that comes up inside of us. That resistance is that fear, that discomfort. And what you want to do is you want to be able to look at that fear and have a look at it a little bit differently. What's the story you tell yourself around about that fear? So we we link them back to stories and the safety and the comfort. And then I talk about a couple of pieces of research that have been done. And one of them is in terms of there was 30,000 people who were asked two questions in the last 12 months. Have you experienced levels of stress? And then people go yes or no. And then they did some follow-up questions. And essentially they would follow up with these people. And they found that people with higher levels of stress, there's a good TED talk on this by Kelly. Oh, I should have checked before I did this. I'll leave it in the show notes. It's a great TED talk. It's like stress is your friend, basically. And she talks about being a doctor and some of the advice that she gave. But basically, the research came back out of 30,000 people. If you had high levels of stress, you were 43% more likely to die within 12 months. I think 12 months, but 43% more likely to die. That sounds scary, right? But there's a catch. There's a catch. It's only if you believe stress is bad or is harmful. Listen to that. If you believe stress is harmful to you, you're 43% more likely to die. And that's just remarkable. It's only your belief around stress. The people who thought that stress was, a positive thing, it was part of the, part of growth and all these sorts of things. And it's just, they were less likely to die than the average person, even when they had high levels of stress. So it's only your belief about stress itself, about whether it's harmful or not, of whether that has an impact on you. So I want you to think right now, what's the story you've been telling yourself about your stress? Has it been harmful? I know sometimes in my life I've been so worried about my own stress and my own anxiety that it was harmful to me. And I think this research is quite remarkable about the expectations. I talk about this, and then I also talk about Alison Wood Brooks, who did a research, Harvard research essentially, was talking about how performance anxiety before you step on stage, and I'm sure I've spoken about this in previous episodes, but before you step on stage, that idea of fear and how to handle it, a lot of people's advice would be just take deep breaths, and be calm. Just calm yourself before you go on stage. And her study showed that when you tell people to be calm, performance actually drops. We do a lot worse. Essentially, what you want to do is don't deny those feelings, those emotions, the fear and the anxiety, the increased heart rate. And rather than call it fear and anxiety as a bad thing, be like, no, this is my body getting prepared. This is how my body prepares for me to stand up on stage and deliver. This heart rate is increasing because my mind is sharpening and narrowing my focus so I can deliver a good performance. I could be present in the moment. That's why this adrenaline's coming in and all this sort of stuff. And people who told that story performed so much better than the people who tried to be calm. So think about this for a second. How can you approach some of the scenarios in your life? What are some of the stories that you tell yourself? And when I'm talking about this, think about the thoughts that are going through your head when you have an important conversation or a meeting that you have to have. Or maybe a difficult conversation that that you want to have with a family member or a friend or a work colleague. Often we frame these, oh my God, this is going to be the worst thing ever. I know I do. I catastrophize so much. But the truth is, if we just change that story, change that approach, you might find that your mind just adapts a little bit differently. Your approach, you feel a bit calmer and you can deliver something that's a bit more authentic. It's not about, this is an important point. This is not about being delusional. Okay. It's not about being like denying the situation. That's what saying I'm calm when the truth is you're actually anxious. That's denying it. That's trying to be delusional about it all. That's why it becomes worse. Because when you step up on stage and you are scared, because it is a scary thing. I stand up on stage every week in front of hundreds of people. And I am still nervous before I step up on stage. I don't have eat before I go on. My mind's racing. I'm really bad at like remembering people's names when I've just entered a venue because I'm so focused on what I'm about to deliver. And I'm in that state until after the event where I can relax and it feels like an adrenaline dump. I've been doing this for years. And I think if you're somebody who doesn't do this and you have to go up and stand up on stage, your levels are just going to be higher and that's completely normal. Okay. Just remember that. So we've gone through stories, we've gone through safety. So let me just clarify the safety bit again. Your brain, whatever it's doing, okay, is trying to do what it thinks is best for you. That's all it's trying to do. And the way it does that often is through what we call biases or heuristics, which are shortcuts. Okay, essentially, your brain needs to conserve energy. There's so much information in the world. Like, I'm going to butcher this statistics. There's about 20 million bits of information that go in your brain at any given time. So much from everywhere. Okay, think about everything that you're consuming in the world right now, just around you right now. Think about the noises behind you, all the lights, everything that's going on that you aren't consciously aware of. You can only consciously be aware of such a small amount. Think of all the stuff that's going on inside of your body you're just not aware of. Like you're not aware of your feet on the floor, the fact that you're sitting on the chair until I tell you, now you can feel it, right? Well, that conscious awareness is about 40 bits of information. So, in order for you to make really quick decisions in these moments, because the truth is, we can't make decisions like slow decisions. Your brain has evolved to make really quick decisions for a reason to survive, to keep you alive. Okay. And it just basically conserve energy. So, these are these biases and heuristics. Now, the funny thing is most of us, obviously people listen to this podcast. We're not biased, are we? There's no way we would be biased. It's all those irrational people out in the world, the people who believe the world is flat, and those irrational people. Can you believe all those people? We're not biased, the people who listen to this podcast, because we learn about biases, so we can't be biased. That's how we see the world. That's how crazy we all are, right? The funny thing is, the biggest bias that we all have is that we are not biased. And we're biased about not being biased. We're in this circular logic trap. That's the way it goes. It just goes round and round and round and round. And the more intelligent you are, the more like you are to be biased, and the harder it is for you to change your mind because you can rationalize all of your thoughts. And it makes it very, very challenging. So there's obviously a lot of biases. I don't go into too many details about it. I just want people to be aware and unhook themselves from that idea that they're not biased. And in my talk, I do this great example where I get everyone to stand up and I influence them a couple of times. In a room of 500 people, nearly every single person sits down straight away. And it just demonstrates how biased we are. I do a simple decision. They all have to just make a simple decision. Everyone makes the same decision, about 90% of people. It's quite remarkable how quickly I can demonstrate that with a group. Doesn't matter how smart they are. Often the smarter they are, the better it works. So I demonstrate that for people in the room. And that gives them a bit of an understanding of how that works. And then we go into a bit more details of this. So I get them to experience more magic. But this time when they demonstrate the magic, I want them to think about those cognitive dissonance, how they're trying to grab onto things that are comfortable and what are the biases that come into play. And then finally, to wrap it all up with my sort of keynote, I try and deliver something that's practical, a tool that they can take away. It's going to enable them to understand the reason why they can't make the decisions, the reason why there's a disconnect between who we are and who we want to be. It's because of this gap. It's this space between stimulus and response that's automated. It's just going bang, bang. And Daniel Kahneman says that around about 95% of our decisions on a daily basis are automatic, system one thinking. Okay. So no wonder it's so difficult to change your mind. No wonder you can't do the things that you want to do because your brain is trying to do the things that are familiar every single time. So you need to break that. You need to break that moment and start making a different decision. And this is where the go method comes in. So the go method is really simple. It's a method I devised, the G and the O. So the G is for ground yourself. You need to, grounding is all about awareness. Okay. So you need awareness of the stimulus, the trigger, the response, whatever that is. You know that you want to make a decision on that moment. Maybe you'll feel an emotion, or maybe you just go in it through the motions. Think about something, a situation for yourself. Now let's have an example. So I'm going to give you an example. This podcast, for instance, I've been putting it off for a few weeks and telling myself, the story I've been telling myself is I don't have enough time. The truth is I've had enough time to watch a lot of TV, but, well, not a lot of TV, but I have been doing a lot. I've been working from really early hours in the morning till late at night. But the truth is I still have time to watch Netflix series at night and stuff. And so I could have got this done. But when I go to do it, I start looking for excuses. Maybe I need this. Maybe I need better lighting. Maybe I need this. And I'm just giving myself and I'm pushing it off into the future. And this is another thing I try and tell people is our brain tries to tell us we've got all the time in the world. Tries to go, I know what, this is a problem that future me can deal with. Future me will be able to lose weight. That's what we sort of rationalize of ourselves. We decide that now doesn't matter. And Oliver Burkeman in 4,000 Weeks, he demonstrates this beautifully with a picture of every single week on a chart, and you color them in. It's like a bit of memento mori sort of idea, is that we could die any moment. And I think the realization of death and being able to just recognize that we could die at any moment. And 4,000 weeks isn't a long time. And half of us, most of the people in the rooms that I'm talking to, are over halfway through. And in the final 20%, it's going to be hard to do any of the goals that you've, sort of dreamed about. So when you recognize that, when you recognize you're not on your last breath, you have an opportunity to do whatever you want. Okay, you think of the remarkable things that you can do in this world today. When you recognize that, you have to go and do the things that you want to do. You feel that motivation, that drive to do it. But then fear can set in. Okay, once you recognize that, the anxiety and the resistance shows up even more. So when that's part of the go, is ground yourself. And it's not about pushing away the fear. It's about leaning into it. Say, fear, I feel you. It's not a bad thing. You're not trying to judge it. You're just going to feel the fear, and that's okay. That's okay. If anything, give me more of that fear. Let me know, show me how much I do care about this. And then the O is the next part. You can't just think your way out of it. So obviously, a lot of what I've been talking about today is metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking. And if you saw the incredible Winter Olympics, is it Elaine Gu? She's done an incredible video on Instagram. And if I can, I'll place that video in here so you get to watch it.
This isn't supposed to be a rude question, but do you think before you speak? Because you answer questions so quickly and so comprehensively, whether it's about geopolitics or your sport or aerodynamics. Like, can you take us into your brain?
Thank you, Charlotte. That's very kind. Oh, man. Do I think? I think overall, I'm just a pensive person. Like, I'm an introspective young woman. Like, I spend a lot of time in my head, and it's not a bad place to be. I journal a lot. I break down all of my thought processes. I think I apply a very analytical lens to my own thinking, and I kind of modify it because it's so interesting. You can control what you think. Like, you can control how you think, and therefore you can control who you are. And especially as a young person, like, I'm 22, so with neuroplasticity on my side, I can literally become exactly who I want to be. How cool is that? Like, how empowering is that, right? And so the fact is, I get to become every day the kind of person that me at age 8 would revere. Like, I would be obsessed with me today. Are you kidding? I would love me. And I think that's the biggest flex of all time, that you can have like little younger you be proud of you today. And so I guess for me, it's like, yes, I spend a lot of time in my own head. Yes, I think a lot, but it's not really like in an egotistical kind of way. It's in like a tinkering, like a scientist kind of way. I'm always like trying to modify. I'm trying to think, how can I be better? How can I approach my own brain the way that I approach my craft of free skiing, so that I can be better tomorrow than I was today?
She talks about this thinking about your thinking. You need to think about your thinking like a scientist. You need to question it, you need to judge it. And this is what this is about. This Go method is a real practical tool that you can implement straight away to sort of help that. So the O is, it can stand for a few things, but override. You need to do something different that you normally do. So it's one small step, one tiny action that's different than you've done before. Okay. Whatever that is, you need to interrupt that pattern. I remember I used to do a pattern interrupt when I was trying to stop drinking alcohol. So whenever I'd get that feeling, the urge to want to drink, or, I would have to interrupt it. And the interrupt I had was, rather than getting really negative about it, and I'd get that feeling, but oh my God, I want to drink. I know, I'm this and that, and start spiraling out of control. I just interrupt with, yes, I'm a non-drinker. Yes, I'm a non-drinker. Or yippee as a bit of a joke. And I would literally do it every time I got that urge. So rather than getting in that negative spiral, I just interrupt. So it's an override. And this is part of this process. And you do that, I think the first couple of weeks, I was doing it hundreds of times. You'd think, oh, I would love a beer right now. Yippee! I'm a non-drinker. And it's about interrupting that pattern. That's part of this Go method. If your default is to do something else, imagine you're trying to lose weight and you ground yourself, you feel the urge of wanting to eat some cake. And then you go, oh, cake would be really good. Then you start thinking about this cake and you're like, I know what, I'll start losing weight next week on Monday. We need to stop before you get to that point and you rationalize yourself out of it. And you need to be like, yippee, I'm going to be healthy for summer, or yippee, I'm a healthy person, or whatever it is, the goal that you've got, the reason, whatever reason you're trying to lose weight, if that's what you're trying to do. But it's about doing that interrupt, that override. So Go method. So one small step, override it, one tiny action. It can be your thought. It can be something different than you've done before. So that's the final moment I leave everyone with in my sort of talk, trying to make it sort of inspirational. And in between all these sort of experiences and these ideas are all stories and experiences. I get everyone to experience their mind and how it works in real time. It's a lot of fun and it's really positive. It's got some serious moments in it, but overall, I'm really enjoying it. I've worked with someone from the US to sort of develop this talk, try and make it as best as I can. And to get consultants involved in this talk and work with other people, I'm really excited to do this. And I hope you got a lot from this episode. My own feelings inside have been pushing this off, but I am dedicated to delivering this. And this week I've tried to not do it with any notes. I'm just trying to deliver it on the top of my head. And I hope it feels a bit more authentic and sort of natural. It's just me talking to a camera with all the thoughts that are inside of my head. So if I messed anything up or missed anything out, I do apologize. But if there's any sort of topics, I've been getting people messaging me about it and they've really enjoyed these sort of episodes. If there's anything in particular you want me to talk about or discuss, I really enjoy it because not only am I talking about this stuff, I'm researching it. I'm trying to work out some of the sort of content. I do have some ideas lined up and I'm going to be on some podcasts over the next few months. I've started to reach out because I'm started to sort of write a book about this whole idea of Mind the Gap. And this is going to develop over time. So as the book comes out and I'm going over different ideas of the book, I'm probably going to do a podcast on each one of them. So it enables me to sort of understand how to articulate the sort of information as best as I can. But, this whole process is a journey for myself and hopefully for people like yourself. And if you did take anything away from this episode and you think it's helpful, insightful, and there's somebody who you think could really help it, please subscribe, please like, or share it with a friend, because the only way I'm going to be able to grow this podcast and get more, I want to bring some guests on, is if we have more subscribers. So that's one thing I've noticed. So make sure you are subscribed, because I would like in the future to bring guests on. I'm going to update once, as you know, I've just moved into a new house. I'll be updating the sort of studio setup, making it look a little bit better. There's so much exciting stuff, but I'm glad that we've got the last few weeks out the way. And I hope now that I'm going to get this podcast out weekly to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. And I wish you all the best. And thank you again. And yeah, that's it. Goodbye.